The Tennessee Titans season was, to say the least, one to forget. Tennessee fans had a lot of hope coming into the 2024 season, which was a lot of hope that I never really understood why. I had many people in my own comment sections mention saying that I was so wrong, that Levis year 2 would be good, and they got a bunch of good players and so on and so forth. And I agreed with them about the Levis point. I did think Levis would have some decent improvement. I thought after his solid rookie year where he played about half the games, he could be the guy. It was possible. But I vastly disagreed on the talent they brought in being enough. I also definitely overestimated the rest of their division. But I did say that I expected them to be a last place team, despite it being not from, quarterback play, other reasons, but I did think they would be a last place team in this division, and that result would be most likely out of any other team in the division. Not only were they actually last in the division come the end of 2024, but they were so bad they got the #1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. So what went wrong, and how can the Titans fix it? That's the big question. But just before we get in this video, I want to take a quick second to remind you about my favorite energy drink, W.GG. These energy drinks are some of my favorites. Like I said, I've not found an energy drink that is this cost effective, that tastes this good, and has no sugars in it, that, don't give you that late day crash. These things, these drinks are my favorite right here. This one right here, the green apple flavor, one of my favorites right now. I'm not a big green apple guy, but this flavor is legit, man. It tastes pretty good. So go check out W.GG or use the link in the description and use code SHREDDER, SHRD3R, for 10% off anything on their website. Either way, thank you guys, and let's get back to the video. First thing we can do is start off with the coaching staff in Tennessee. This past year was the first season under former Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan as the Titans head coach. His offense in Cincinnati was one of the main reasons that he was seen as a very hot commodity coming out of the 2023 NFL season. The Titans were also trying to find a new look for this team. Mike Vrabel was the head coach prior, and, I think he could be said that he had good success in Tennessee, all things considered. But the franchise just simply needed to go a different direction, which I do think was a mistake. A guy like Vrabel, I don't think you let him out of the building for anything. Callahan brought along offensive coordinator Nick Holtz and former passing game coordinator for Jacksonville Jaguars. And then he brought in the defensive coordinator Denard Wilson from the Baltimore Ravens, who was their defensive backs coach. The hires of Callahan, Holtz can be seen as question marks for the current time being. I don't think they had a very good season, and I don't think that's very hard to understand. And I think that could be quite the disappointment, as, as bad as they were, considering they were both pretty highly touted offensive minds. The expectations left a lot to be desired. But Denard Wilson's defense was a step up from the offense for sure, which is impressive in an ideological sense, being that former head coach Mike Vrabel was a defensive-minded head coach. And in terms of yardage, the Titans last year went from the 18th defense in 2023 to the second best defense in the league in 2023 to 2024. Wilson brought a lot of much-needed improvement to the Titans' defensive backs especially. But the question remains, are these the coaches that are needed to turn around this team? To answer that question, we don't have an answer yet. We need at least one more year to see for sure. I think we need to see Brian Callahan get the quarterback he wants. He didn't pick Will Levis. Will Levis was drafted by a previous regime, and we also need to see his offense's true setup from that. I do like what we've seen from Denard Wilson's defense in year one, especially with the limited talent on the roster they have now. The Titans were the second best in yards, but third in the league in points allowed. That kind of may make not a whole lot of sense, because how are they so good at yards and points? Well, that correlation, it usually means one thing and one thing only. They had too many offensive turnovers, putting the defense in bad positions time after time, setting up short field after short field for the opposing teams. This can be proven, as they were tied with the Cleveland Browns in 2024 for the most turnovers in the league. So let's give this staff one more chance in 2025 to build their vision in Tennessee before we overreact. Looking elsewhere for 2025, I think the next thing we can go to is the building of the roster, right? I think it starts with that. This offseason has already been action-filled for the Titans, firing second-year GM Ran Carthon, and I think this was probably a good decision. Last year's draft, he started off with 3, I would say, good picks in Skoronski, and then Levis in round 2, value-wise, was pretty good, and then Tyjae Spears in round 3. But that was about it in that whole draft class. That's it. And Levis is now seen as not a good draft pick just 2 years later. The 2024 draft was rough for him. He took Alabama offensive tackle J.C. Latham very early, in my opinion, and that showed in year one as he had a rough year. I don't think T'Vondre Sweat was a bad pick at all, but at the same time, considering that he was, fell from some pre-draft issues with the speeding ticket he got, it makes sense. However, he didn't have a great season one. I think we're yet to be seen on what he can fully do. He did play the majority of the snaps for the Titans this season, but he wasn't particularly good or bad. He was kind of just in that middling level, which I'll give him a bye on that. Let's see him in another year in the NFL. Any other draft pick in 2024, though, is not worth mentioning for this team. Guys either didn't play or didn't play well. Either one of those. But the biggest issue, in my opinion, for Ran Carthon was not his drafts. It was his free agency classes. In 2024, this one was quite controversial, and in my opinion, this is the reason he was and should have been fired. Carthon's job is to supply much-needed assets for his team's success. And following the 2023 season, we saw that Levis needed guys to block for him. We need guys to throw to. He attempted to fix the offensive line through picks in the draft like J.C. Latham, bringing in Lloyd Cushenberry, a very decent center from the Denver Broncos, but that's about it. Not much else was done to the offensive line. He had one guy with an established future in the draft class before with Peter Skoronski. That was it for the entire five-man offensive line. No one else was really worth mentioning. But then the wide receivers. Ran Carthon dropped the ball here. Literally. Carthon, he brought in Calvin Ridley on a ridiculous contract of 4 years for $92 million. This contract has a higher average annual value than guys like Mike Evans, than Chris Godwin, than T. Higgins, than Stephon Diggs, than Keenan Allen, then Amari Cooper, who, well, now this year he didn't play very well, but prior to, that's terrible. That's not good at all. Prior to this season, when that was getting paid more than Amari Cooper from the past year, that's awful. He's not better than one of those guys. Ridley had a numerically good season, finishing with 64 catches and over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns, but Ridley is no special player and was certainly not deserving of the contract given, where he's making, well over his desired amount. Then he brought in Tyler Boyd and re-signed Nick Westbrook-Akine for low-budget deals, which those are great, but neither of these guys are actual legitimate assets to a team that are, above third, fourth, or fifth receiver options. Ran Carthon did bring in Tony Pollard, who I'll give him that much. He did do a lot better than I expected him to do. But my problem here is he brought in a guy to split reps with Tyjae Spears, who's very similar to Tyjae Spears. Generally, you probably should have gone with an running back who's more of a bruising back to, the agile player that Tyjae Spears is. I just don't really understand that very much. It's kind of double dipping in the same category. Bringing in legitimate weaponry was obviously a big issue for Ran Carthon. This offseason, they have to address these issues. Wide receiver has to get better. Offensive line needs more of a boost. But the place to start here is definitely at the quarterback. The good news here is they got the number 1 pick in this draft. They get the pick of the litter. But that sucks this year. I assume they're going to take one of those guys at pick number 1. But I think the smarter idea would be to run it back with Levis. Take a bridge quarterback from the free agency pool and be patient. Be bad again. Because even if it does suck this year, this quarterback class is hard to gauge in my opinion. And that's just the start of it, right? A lot of upside, but incredibly low floors for just about every guy coming into the league this year. I want to preface this, though. This idea here that we're incredibly early in the draft season. I haven't got all of my film done by any means. Things will change a lot from the grand scheme of things down the line. We're just in January. We have a long time till April. But, this is going to change from my personal opinions as I watch more film and review more players to all the way up to the grand scheme of things. The quarterback's a question, but maybe a bridge quarterback. Maybe that's the option. Let's go to free agency real quick. If the Bengals do let T. Higgins go, he is a requirement for this team. He has to be here with the experience under Callahan's system, and I think overpaying for Higgins would not even be the worst thing to do. That would make so much sense with the relationship he has with Brian Callahan. Cam Robinson is expected to be a pending free agent out of Minnesota. They traded for him after the injury to Christian Darrisaw. He has experience with Nick Foles in Jacksonville. This is something that also they should take advantage of. This would help them bolster their offensive line a whole lot. They can also target a guy like Brandon Scherf, a guy who spent another year in Jacksonville with Nick Holtz. A solid, notable offensive guard who will be looking for the final destination for the last couple years of his career. I think Tennessee would be a great fit for him as well. Then looking at that quarterback one more time, bringing in a veteran quarterback is very wise. If you can land a Jameis Winston, a Carson Wentz, or maybe even more of like a raw prospective vet like a Justin Fields, a Drew Lock, a Trey Lance, These guys would all be good and cheap targets to run it back with Levis and just have competition. See, let somebody go out there and try to win their job, have a chance in the league, and if not, you get a good pick next year as well. The Titans have also had a very long-running issue with their edge rusher, something they have to look to improve upon. In the league, the most important positions in football are quarterback, left tackle, and edge rusher. You have to have those things figured out to win in this league. And I think the best way to go about this draft this year is a trade down. But that is incredibly hard to predict. So this is what a perfect draft looks like to me. At the first overall pick, you take a dynamic weapon in Travis Hunter or a legit edge rusher in Mykel Williams, a guy who maybe he's not super high on draft boards right now, but I think by the end of this, he might be way up these boards. Mykel Williams at 1, he seems like the perfect fit to get a legit edge rusher for this team. In the second round, early on, pick 35, you have a choice of some interesting quarterbacks here. I think value-wise, this is a great spot for a Quinn Ewers or maybe even a Jalen Milroe. But I still would wait and develop this team elsewhere. Try to find a legit wide receiver weapon for maybe a Will Levis to step up. That'd be great. If Emeka Egbuka or Isaiah Bond falls, this would be a great spot for either of these guys. So we're going to take Isaiah Bond here. In round 3 at pick 101, they have to get another weapon, a legit tight end. Get off of Chigakonkwo. Gunnar Helm, the tight end from Texas, should be available, and he's really more of a wide receiver, but he would be a great safety blanket for any quarterback who runs it up in Tennessee next year. Round 4, pick 117, Connor Colby out of Iowa, an offensive lineman with guard to center flexibility. Be a great pick just for some, like I said, flexibility and also depth along the offensive line. If not, maybe some lower tier starter capable play. In round 5, they have 2 picks at 140 and 166. At 140, Lander Barton, the linebacker out of Utah, incredible athlete. For a linebacker at least. He can do all the things a linebacker may need. Taking him would give them a lot of flexibility in free agency to maybe not have to pay a guy like Jerome Baker. And then at 166, if Jabbar Muhammad is still sticking around the corner from Oregon, he's a really solid tackler. Outside zone corner would be a great fit in Tennessee, in my opinion. In the 6th round, pick 176, Kyle McCord, the quarterback out of Syracuse. To get a younger option, kind of see if you can develop something. Really just throw another thing at the wall and see if something sticks there. And in the 7th round, 239, Xavier Truss, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. He has some flexibility too. He can play guard in the league. He's enormous. He's incredibly raw, but he is absolutely enormous. Give them more flexibility, more stability across, and just get another guy in the room to see if he can do something when this O-line has not been good in quite some time. This kind of draft class is really an early prediction. Guys, they could be way up in my draft order as I watch more film over the offseason, but these guys at the moment would be great spot fillers for a developmental season. There is no one answer into rebuilding an NFL franchise, and if there was, we would see a lot more success from these bottom feeder NFL teams that are constantly at the top 10 picks in the draft. The biggest concern, though, has to yet be addressed by teams like Tennessee. That's the front office. These executives, I have a saying that poor franchises remain poor franchises until they are not poor franchises. Generally meaning that it starts at the top, and if the top is going to stay the same, the rest of it's going to be just as bad. Mike Vrabel was swinging shots towards the executives during his New England Patriots Hall of Fame induction. This would be a first step, but the plan essentially is relax, give it time, develop these guys. Guys like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they don't come around all the time. So if you see somebody in 2026 or 2027 that you think would better suit what your team could use in the future, have some patience. Acknowledge that, yeah, you may not be as good as you would like, but you can plan an attack on the rest of the league by taking some time and developing a team in the right way. If the Titans go about a setup for this team, so with something like this, they end up with a much better outlook at least on their team. First off, in the quarterback, you'll have Will Levis or maybe a bridge quarterback, like I mentioned earlier, a Brissett, a Carson Wentz, a Justin Fields are on the better end. One of those things for development, for potential, to see if something can work. And, if it doesn't work, well, hey, we're bad again, and we'll have a good pick next year. At receiver, they'll at least have some options. T. Higgins, Isaiah Bond as their wide receiver 3, Calvin Ridley as a wide receiver 2. I don't like the money he's making in a wide receiver 2, but I much prefer his talents and abilities as a wide receiver 2 or 3. Then they'll have a legit edge rusher. Mykel Williams could be a legit #1 guy they have not had in quite a long time. They'll have a lot better of a defense overall after they can get to the pass rush going a lot better from the first place. A lot of these things will help this team at least see, are we close? Can this make something work? Is Will Levis the answer? We've given him another shot. This is it. It's not going to work. Is Justin Fields, is he going to have a career in the NFL? It's not going to work. Is he going to have another shot? Things like that. You'll answer a lot of questions about this grand scheme of your team if you just take another year and give your team a chance to develop. That's going to do it, though, for this video in how to fix the Tennessee Titans. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who would you take? What do you think is a big dominant factor for this team getting back to being a good football team once again? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. Those things really do help my channel out, and it doesn't cost you a single thing. You're already here, so just click those buttons. I appreciate y'all for watching all the way to the end, and I will see y'all in the next one.